If you're running a company between 10 and 100 employees and you're tired of bouncing between 10 different tools just to track and manage work, paying for subscriptions that are barely even used, and still not being able to get a single source of truth for tasks, projects, and reporting, then listen up. I'm going to show you exactly why Atlassian is the best work management platform for your small business. And I'm also going to show you why it's scalable enough to be the last tool that you will ever need. And by the way, it's actually far cheaper than you probably think. Hey there, I'm Josh, CEO and founder of Grid.io. We've helped implement Atlassian for over 200 companies, all the way from 10-person startups to enterprise teams. And I've actually seen firsthand what works and what doesn't. Now tell me if this sounds familiar. Your marketing team is using Asana, engineering is on Jira, IT runs everything from Freshdesk, your operations live in Smartsheets, and your executive team, well, they just do everything within Slack. And you want to understand what is actually in progress. You want to be able to know your team's capacity. Can they actually take on more work? And you want basic metrics on projects. But every single time you try to get an answer, there is no single source of truth. And you resort to just sending a Slack message to a team lead. You say, hey, what's the status on this project? And it takes hours and maybe in some cases even days to just get a response and get an answer that is probably not 100% accurate. There is no place that you can immediately go to know what is currently happening in your company. Now, here's where most leaders make a critical mistake. You look at larger companies, enterprises with hundreds or even thousands of employees, and you see them using different tools across a lot of different departments. So you end up thinking that's the standard. And if you want to grow to that size, then we should mimic that approach. But that thinking is actually completely backwards for companies under 100 people. And it's actually doing the opposite of helping you. It's completely drowning you and your company. Let me explain why. Enterprise companies often have teams dedicated just for reporting. They have teams that build data lakes, pull everything into Power BI, and create unified dashboards from dozens of different tools. And they have the resources to actually make that fragmentation work. You don't. You have the data, but you don't have the resources and the team to actually consolidate into one platform. And you end up just paying for more chaos. More tools does not equal more productivity. For a company of your size, this equals more cost, more confusion, and slower decisions. And here's what this fragmentation actually ends up costing you. First, there's the obvious cost. You're paying for 5, 6, 7 different subscriptions. Some of them barely even get used. But the bigger cost here is actually your time. Every time that you need an answer, you end up waiting. Every time that you build a report, someone is manually pulling that data from multiple tools into one source of truth, into a spreadsheet. And this is a cost that you're probably not even calculating. It is the opportunity cost. It's the decisions that you could have made immediately if you had the visibility, the course corrections you could have made in real time instead of finding out 2 weeks later that a project went sideways. And you're not just spending more money, you're moving slower than you should be and probably slower than your competition. Now, once you realize that more tools is actually not the answer, that a single source of truth is worth more than a dozen best-in-class tools, the question now becomes which platform can actually do it all? And after 200 implementations, here are the 3 reasons why Atlassian is the best platform to consolidate all of your work management. Reason number 1 is the product library. With Jira, Confluence, Loom, and Atlassian Goals, you can get task management, documentation, video communication, and goal tracking all in one tight-knit ecosystem. And if you compare this to other tools, Monday does task tracking decently well, but your docs probably live in Google Docs. And your goals are probably somewhere in some spreadsheet. And your meeting recordings are probably somewhere else entirely. You're still bouncing between a whole bunch of different tools and systems. In Atlassian, these tools are deeply integrated. I can easily embed a Confluence doc directly into a Jira ticket. I can attach a Loom directly to a task. I can link a company goal to every project and subtask that supports it, giving my whole team visibility to what they're actually working towards. In most companies that do track goals, they're doing that in a separate tool that people only look at once a quarter. Now with Atlassian Goals, you can trace from your biggest company initiative all the way down to your smallest subtask. Your team actually sees how their work connects to the bigger picture. And there's one platform, there's one source of truth from your highest level goal down to your lowest level task. And that is absolutely massive. Reason number 2 is the integrated ecosystem. Consolidating into one platform doesn't mean you necessarily stop using every single other tool out there. You still probably need Slack for chat, Zoom for meeting, and you probably need some form of a CRM. The difference is how those native tools feel to your core work management system. And with Atlassian's integration, I can easily create a ticket directly from Slack. I can even update Confluence docs without leaving my chat window. And the tools feel like they're part of the same system and not separate islands. And then there's the app marketplace. Now this one is absolutely massive and has a ton of benefits. If you need time tracking, capacity planning, financial planning, Tempo is a phenomenal option for that plugs directly into Jira. And they're far less expensive than standalone tools. And then there's their API, which pretty much gives you control of all of Jira, Confluence, and all of their other tools. For example, at grid.io, we actually auto-generate an entire Jira project or Jira space every single time we onboard a new client. We add tasks, subtasks, due dates, all of those are populated from our CRM. And that would normally take hours of time. But right now, with the right automation setup, it takes just a few minutes. And because everything lives in one place, reporting actually becomes realistic. You're not pulling data from 5 different systems into one singular spreadsheet. You're clicking a button and seeing exactly where every single project currently is. Now, reason number 3, this is actually the one that surprises the most people, and it's pricing. Most people just assume that Jira is expensive. They think it's enterprise software, and it doesn't really make sense until you're a very large company. But I actually think the opposite is true. A few months ago, I did a massive pricing breakdown between Jira, Notion, Asana, Monday, Smartsheets, and every other major player in the work management space. And Jira was actually one of the cheapest options on the market for actual work management. But really, the real savings isn't in the subscription cost. It's what you avoid paying later. Every single tool that you adopt today is a tool that you might have to replace tomorrow. And if you've ever migrated a CRM or a project management system, you know that that's not cheap and it is a massive headache. It costs months of work, tens of thousands of dollars, and a massive productivity hit while your team relearns everything. And the beauty of Atlassian is that it just scales so well. If you're a 10-person team or a 10,000-person team, Jira can work in both environments very, very well. You're adopting a tool that you will essentially never outgrow, which means that you're never paying the migration tax again. Now, let me give you a really quick example of what this looks like in practice. We worked with a company called The Smilist, which is a national dentistry chain. And when we started, they had their data scattered across 4 or 5 different tools. And getting the status on any task or project or onboarding or whatever it was typically took days, if not weeks. Their operations team was spending over 5 hours a week on just compiling reports manually. Now, what we did was pulled all of these various tools into Atlassian. We migrated their work management tools, projects, goals, HR, IT, executives, everything into one system. We even pulled in their assets into Jira Service Management. And within 90 days, rather than doing all of the work manually where they're pulling those reports, pulling that context, trying to find which asset belongs to which person, everything was located in one source of truth. So all they had to do was either run one simple report or, for example, look up one very specific asset that their team owned to see where it was located, when it was purchased, and who it was assigned to. Now, that's a little bit more specific to asset management, but along with that, they had all of their projects, their processes, their work within one platform, which actually allowed a lot more automations to be run as well. And when we started to implement some of those automations with onboarding, we were able to reduce the total amount of onboarding time that it took by 60%. Now, this mostly makes sense for companies between 10 and 100 employees who are already feeling the pain of tool sprawl. And if you're a 5-person team and Slack is working fine for you now, you probably don't need this yet. But if you're a growing company and you're tired of paying for tools that don't talk to each other, if you want one source of truth for everything, tasks, docs, goals, and even reporting, click the link in the description and book a strategy call. We'll look at your current tool stack. We will show you exactly where the fragmentation is costing you money. And then we'll actually map out what consolidation into the Atlassian ecosystem can actually look like for you.